Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to spend some time with you all today and with our panel. Here's what's going to happen. One, you're going to try really, really hard not to fall asleep on me. Okay, so that's number one. Two, we're going to hear from a really distinguished panel, all of whom are really, really good at what they do at their day jobs. And I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. I'm going to ask them some questions. And then at the very end, I'm going to take questions from the audience. So while you're listening, feel free to write down any questions that you might have. No question is off limits. There are no stupid questions. We're all here to learn, okay? So, if we're all ready for that, are we all ready? Thank you. Also, I'm very much a call and response person, so I am not here to preach to you, to teach to you. We are in conversation together today. So if you find something funny, laugh out loud. If you find something ridiculous, groan out loud. I will ask you about it later. But feel free to fully participate with your whole body, with your whole voice, with your whole selves today, okay? All right, so I'm gonna start to my right. You're not supposed to have favorites, but I do. So my favorite on the panel today is Andrea. So I will just say that right now. So what I'll do, can everyone tell us your name, tell us where you work, and then tell us why it is important to have youth voice involved in policymaking in 2 sentences or less.
So my name is Andrea Gill. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a program manager for Youth Leadership Institute. We are a statewide organization here in California. We're all the way down from Eastern Coachella Valley all the way to Marin. And so we strongly believe that young people should be at the heart and center of every decision that's made for them. And we do this in a myriad of ways. First, we do a research study, and that's a way where we can debunk, right? Like, young people are in their community, they know what's best for their communities. And then moving forward, we offer them myriads of storytelling. So whether that be podcasts, murals, if that's articles, they have a chance to use their voice on a platform. And to answer your question around policy, is that you can't have a conversation about them without them. And so they need to be present and also be the one driving the boat, as we say. And also be able to speak in a language that they can resonate, right? So let's break down the jargon and a chance for them to fully explore what it means. And I'll pass it to my right.
Hi, my name is Alison Merrilees, and my job is not a job. I retired at the beginning of January, so now my job is being retired. But it's nice to be back in kind of the Capital community where I worked for about 25 years. For the last 11 years, I was the chief counsel for the Assembly Committee on Judiciary, on which RBK is a member still, and a very active one and important one. Yes, I worked. My committee analyzed her bills and every other social media bill that had some sort of enforcement mechanism through the courts. I know RBK mentioned that the legislature is an important component in making products safer, but the courts are equally, if not more so, important. One of the concepts that she brought up was product safety. California has a long history of ensuring that products are safe, but the most important ways to ensure that is the legal principle of strict liability, which means if anybody is in any way involved in distributing a product, whether they are advertising it, whether they're shipping it, whether they're selling it, they are ultimately responsible for a person who's injured. And the courts have said, look, we don't really care how much your responsibility was in that chain of distribution. We care about the person at the back end who was injured. What's interesting about this in this context, though, is I worked on a couple of very controversial strict liability bills that dealt with products sold by electronic means. For years and years, companies like Amazon argued, we're just connecting the buyer and the seller. We're not actually the seller. We're just the host that advertises this product. The actual, strict liability lies with the person who sold it. Well, it turns out that person can not exist when after the injury occurs. They can be a fake company that immediately went out of business in China. So courts don't want to leave that person, uncompensated. This seems like a diversion, and it kind of is, but ultimately we tried that bill for 2 years. The chair of our committee was the author. It was highly controversial, and we almost got it to the finish line the first year. And the second year, we ultimately didn't bother to have it come up for a vote in our own committee because the courts decided the issue. They said, you know what, that Amazon, this argument is nonsense. It's being sold on your platform. You are strictly liable. So in that case, the legislative solution was much less favorable to the public than the legal solution. So the courts did a better job of enforcing consumer rights than the legislature. And in the courts, in theory, the best case scenario, and we're still in this world, at least for the state courts in California, the courts are not as influenced by lobbying, by political issues, by currying favor with one side or the other. They are really an important, safety mechanism, at least in our state, for protecting consumer rights. So when all else fails, the courts should be there to protect us. In terms of youth, I think that RBK touched on this issue when she said, emailing, calling is super important. We really loved having youth show up at committee hearings, but just so you know, that's not where the decisions get made. The decisions are made at, a week or more before that committee hearing takes place. So you want to be calling, emailing, showing up for sure at district offices and at the state capitol. Find out who your member is, and make your opinion known. And you guys have the skills. You are subject matter experts in how the social media affects you. So use your expertise as a persuasion tool.
Thank you. I feel right at home. My baby brother is a lawyer, and he works at the state AG's office in New Hampshire. So I had flashbacks to kitchen table conversations. But hello, I am Christelle. I lead global teen well-being policy over at Discord. And to answer kind of that icebreaker question in terms of why we should center youth voice in our policy making, I'm going to keep it really quick so that the policies are good and so that they're effective.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Wes Hernandez with Snapchat. I'm on our U.S. policy team for our Western United States and based in Santa Monica. So I think all of my panelists would also agree, youth shouldn't be just passive recipients of policies that are passed. We should be a part of the decision-making process and come up with these ideas. And we want at Snap to hear from your online experiences and your hopes and your ideals and what we should do to change that. And so I think that's super important. That's why y'all should be engaged in policy.
Thank you so much, Wes. So my first question is just going to address the elephant in the room. I know that when you all woke up this morning, you went to your front door, you opened it, you picked up the newspaper, you went back inside, you sat down, opened the paper with your cup of coffee, and you started reading it. And what you read was about all of these court cases that are happening right now against some major tech companies. Everyone did that this morning, right? Yes, perfect. So my question is first to Andrea, why do you think it's worth youth in this current environment engaging with tech companies politically?
Oh, that's a great question. And then I think especially I could speak for, so I run a program called Healthy Online Platform for Everyone, HOPE Coalition. And it's been running about 5 years. We actually have young people in the room. Yeah, I'm gonna shout you out. Yep, I see y'all. Raise your hand. And so we engage just like in the motto I shared earlier with YLI. And in the beginning of last year, I just seen such the low morale in the program because we were seeing all the headlines, the media flashes of how tech companies, certain tech companies, are discontinuing DEI efforts, are no longer fact checking, and are no longer listening, right, to what the research has shown about how it's affecting youth mental health and well being. And so, where do we go from this? How can I tell my young people to still advocate? And we have to put a pause and we have to think about ourselves and our mental health and wellness. And we think, well, what is our message and what tactics do we want to go into? And so certain tech companies, we know that there's only so much we can talk to because we're not seeing them display the action towards. And in the other portion, I had actually the honor to be part of the Inspired Internet Pledge, and Discord and Snapchat are also a part as advisors. And it's actually an initiative within the industry of having a platform. Well, why don't we bring a space that actually inspires youth? And they hosted an Amplify Youth Summit in Nashville. So they gathered youth across the nation, and it was very youth centered. And it's actually youth were able to talk directly to Snapchat and Discord about the work, kind of unveil the curtain, and it was a chance for them to directly listen and to create a space. And so I would say that you have to show up in your values and then you have to adequately action. Young people, if they don't see, if we just see you do the talk but without no action, then where does that leave us in the conversation? And why should we put our energy into sharing our ideas if it feels like it's going to hit a brick wall? And then we can, as an organizer, there's other ways to go about it, right? We've seen the quit ChatGPT as a forum because we're seeing that data is being used in a certain way. But yeah.
Wes and Christelle, this is a great opportunity for you to chime in and talk about how your companies are thinking about youth voice and policy making.
Happy to start. Yeah, and so definitely a great opportunity to just mention our Council for Digital Wellbeing. And this was a council that we launched 2 years ago in 2024. It brought together 13 to 16-year-olds from across the country to do exactly that, right? To talk about the issues that they're seeing online, to see where we can make certain changes, and to actually get them in the room and inform us what should we be doing. And it was so successful that we've now replicated that in other places like in Australia and across Europe. And we're actually beginning our second cohort later this year. We're currently taking applications from folks. So we do have some information in the back tables. You can scan a QR code if you're interested in joining or applying for that council to start having these conversations, to let us know, what are we missing? Where are the gaps? What could we be doing better? It takes all of us to really kind of come together and learn about this and have these tough conversations, but we're better for it. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that.
That's awesome. Fully support youth councils. I know a lot of youth in the room are part of a pretty robust kind of council. Will say that Discord, I fully acknowledge, is behind the game. We just announced the formation of our first youth council. That announcement went out yesterday. We are super excited. But where we have been integrating youth, and I will say it's beyond thinking about integrating youth, and I'm so glad you brought up the Amplify Youth Summit. We rely on our partners, our partnerships heavily. So some of those partners are in the room. We work immensely with the National PTA. We also work with organizations like the Digital Wellness Lab. We speak directly with teens. We host workshops. We host focus groups. And I mentioned partners in this country. We are a global company. We do this around the world. And we get those voices in and we present those voices directly to our product teams, to our engineers, to make sure that those voices are amplified, that the people who work at the company hear those voices and that changes are made. And I will also say it's a feedback loop, right? We can't just say like, oh, great, you came and you gave your little talk. We go back and we say, how did we do? And if we didn't do well, we need to go back to the drawing board. So it's going to be that cycle. Again, super excited to launch our own youth council. But again, it goes beyond just a youth council. We really need to get a collective voice of youth at the table.
Thank you. Alison, we talked a lot about youth voice, but tell us, who are members actually listening to? Besides you. So we know they're listening to you, but who else are they listening to?
I mean, I think sadly, I mean, I'd hate to pop anyone's bubble, but legislators listen to powerful interest groups, and the tech industry is among them. So I think it's great when the tech industry works with youth, but you know, tech industry doesn't always look out for consumer or youth interest. They are corporations. Their mission is to maximize profits, and so I really, again, you are subject matter experts on the effect of the internet on youth, and you have a powerful voice. So please use it in many different ways. And then the last thing I'll add is that sadly, I don't think many people get newspapers anymore, which is part of the problem. But
Shocked.
the litigation that you're referring to is that is a product defect sort of based litigation theory that the internet and social media is a product that has specifically been designed to be dangerous to youth. And so that is why the litigation has been allowed to proceed. The internet companies are not immune because of third-party content. The theory is that they are liable because they have specifically designed a product to be harmful. And also, the lead plaintiff in the lead case is a youth, and she used her voice in that way to get involved. You know, I really feel great sympathy for her because her personal life is front and center. Sort of the key legal argument is how much was she harmed and who caused the harm? And so the internet companies are dragging out all of the traumatic things that have ever happened to her life and literally arguing, we didn't cause all that bad stuff. Bad things happened to her, and there were other causes for her trauma. And it's just very sad.
It is. I didn't know that people weren't getting newspapers to their door anymore, so thank you for letting me know about that. I'm curious, we have been talking a lot about youth councils. How many people here are part of some kind of youth advisory council, just by show of hands? You're part of some youth advisory council. Okay, so many of you. How do we make sure youth councils aren't performative? This is for anyone who's willing to answer. How do we ensure that when young people share their thoughts, their ideas, their hopes, their dreams, that they actually are taken seriously and implemented?
I think even in the word advisory, right? Advisory, you're just advising someone versus action. So we want to move it to youth action team. So actually, they're at the forefront at the table, and then there's the ones who are in charge, and you give them that autonomy and leadership. So for us, we restructured our whole coalition, where the young people you see at the table are the ones who tell me what projects they want to work on, and then I just support them in realistic timelines. And as an adult ally, that's what we can do. What resources can we provide for you, and who can we also stand up for you, so your voices are being able to share out outspokenly. And so at the very infrastructure of everything is that they're also in charge of decision making, and they're also the ones who can be able to share back to other youth now, right? Because you give them that leadership as well. So I would say switch it from advisory to action. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. And also just implementing their feedback too, right? It's the little things. And I'll share a story. Earlier this year, we rolled out our digital online safety training program called the Keys to Digital Safety. It's not a mandatory training, but parents, caregivers, and their children can take it to learn a couple of things. First, you learn about the online harms that you might encounter online: bullying, sextortion, things of that sort. Second, you learn how to report those things on Snap. Now, when we were doing the rollout, we had this whole training that had been set up. It's a 45-minute training, and one of our youth basically said, "This is a great training, but you don't have teens doing the training and leading the training on your modules. How can we change that?" And so we're just like, one of those little things, just like, oh, light bulb, of course, like this is for teens, this is by teens, we need to incorporate that. But it's those little things, being able to take that feedback and put it into action, that goes a long way. And so, always keeping youth in mind, especially when we're rolling out certain things, for instance, any kind of lenses or any kind of feature on our platform, trying to see how we can incorporate them into it.
Yeah, and I would just give a big +1 and underline exactly what had been said. I will also say at Discord, we just wrapped a big study. I've been going across the country, again, with the National PTA, listening to teens, also talking to their parents to improve our family center feature. And that is kind of our main family tool that's offered on Discord. But most importantly, we're following up. So we made improvements, we rolled them out. We are now partnering with Yale University to see how parents that they are speaking to, how teens that they are going to be speaking to, how it's going to land. Then we're going to do another iteration because, again, I think this work never stops. It never should stop. It's a constant evolution, but we need to have that feedback loop, that constant improvement, never settling. But yeah, we need to make sure that it's effective.
Thank you. So I was doom scrolling the other day, and the good news is I know when I'm doing it now, right? I don't actually stop, but I know that I'm doing it. And I came across a gentleman who was doing an interview, and he said one of the biggest indicators of poverty today is how much time a child spends online. And he was making the argument that those from wealthier families, wealthier communities had a lot of outside activities to keep them occupied. They were on a sports team, they were on debate, they were traveling, they were at the museum, they were all doing all of these things. They were at the national parks that kept them offline. And people who did not have as many resources were spending much of their downtime on the internet. And that got me thinking about how we think about who we are inviting into the rooms to talk about online safety. How do we make sure that our marginalized communities who don't have as many resources, who may be spending more time online than people who have the resources to spend at extracurricular activities, are actually the ones in the room and not the ones who have access because their mom, their dad, their cousin, their aunt knows someone who works at Discord or Snap, et cetera. So how do we make sure that we are getting um, a variety of voices, of youth voice in the room? And that's for anyone who wants to answer.
I can definitely speak to this. Majority of the youth I work with, predominantly youth of color, come from different backgrounds, from rural communities that necessarily they do not have internet access at times. Their school doesn't have access. And so working with those young people, and then they also carry a lot of responsibilities for their families. And so a lot of my students also support with their families with researching online, supporting with translation documentation. And so what they carry is a myriad of things. And I think you really speak to, I always ask if anytime I see resource, like how much language accessibility is there, and is also culturally relevant. I think a large missing is the also Latino community, and anytime we talk about online safety, because the way that we communicate, right, we hear from our parents, like Facebook, that's the way to communicate back home, but it's also a lot of misinformation that happens on those sites, and so then we're kind of teaching from upward, we'll say. Like our generation is teaching our like old elders of like how to use the internet, and it's also a layer of responsibility that not that's sometimes can feel like a burden and sometimes can feel like this heavy weight to make sure we're also checking the sources. And so definitely how do you reach to those young people and especially to their parents at any place too.
Happy to add on to that as well. I think at Snap, a lot of our policy approaches is grounded in the research that we do and making sure that we cast a wide net. So, for instance, our digital well-being index, new results are out today, so definitely check those out. But really, surveying teens, young adults, parents of teens and young adults across 6 countries to say, what is working, what isn't working, and having them tell us. And so making sure that you're getting that information out there to then have those results come back to you and have a policy approach that corresponds to that. And what I will share with those results that came out this year, of course, what we see is folks that are flourishing online are able to mitigate those online risks more effectively, and also those that are online actually are able to, if they see an online risk, report that to a parent, to a caregiver, to a friend. So those conversations are happening. We could be doing more, and we should be doing more. And just excited for that opportunity and those results.
And if I could just quickly add here, so my background is academic nonprofit, and I hear you when you talk about marginalized voices and making sure that gets in there. And I think it's important to remember that if, now I sit in industry, when I show up in industry, the looks that I get are very different from the looks that I got when I was in academic nonprofit. And that was a very big change for me just on a personal level because I care so deeply about this work. But it also made me recognize that now I'm not looked at as a neutral third party, right? Like that has kind of been stripped. And I think when you say you're from Discord or from Snap or from any company, you lose that and you have to recognize that, which is important to work with partners. And you need to partner with educational institutions. I mentioned Yale, Harvard, et cetera, to be doing this work. You need to be partnering with ConnectSafely, with boots on the ground organizations, national PTA, making sure that those voices are uplifted by neutral third parties who can care and who are in positions to uplift those voices. And you need to be taking those insights into the company. So I think that's another way that we can make sure that we're hitting our marks because it's important to do so.
Thank you. Alison, earlier you referenced the young woman at the heart of some of the court cases, and I struggle with this a lot in my work as an advocate. How important are personal stories to getting things done in the Capitol?
I mean, I think personal stories are just a fundamental way that we relate to each other. And, we see sort of politicians do this very, in a disturbing way sometimes, and in a very dehumanizing way other times. But I mean, I just think that is how policy becomes real, is what is happening to individual people and whether the law needs to be changed to try and prevent whatever happened to them. I, I think personal stories are at the heart of policy, and sometimes that to as a person who worked very deeply in policy and cared very much about how laws affected the general population, I've got to say that sometimes laws that are tailored on one person's experience are not the most thoughtful because sometimes bad things happen to individual folks, even though the overall law works really well. So should the law be changed to try, and who knows whether a change in law would have prevented that harm anyway, but should the law that applies to everyone in the entire state be changed because of one person's experience? I mean, it's hard to say, and that's at the crux of the policymaker's decision, is when is that story compelling enough to justify the change in law that will affect the entire state?
Yeah, I stopped sharing my personal experiences a long time ago in advocacy because I realized that they didn't matter as much as I thought they did. Not because my personal experiences weren't important, but because it was more important to understand what the majority of people were experiencing and going through, right? And my story did not necessarily mean it was common. So that is food for thought for folks as they think about how to do storytelling and narrative change. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to move to Q&A in the room. My question for all of you is, what do you see as the future in online safety for youth? What is your hopes and dreams for young people in online safety? Let's start to my right.
First is being able to connect. Like I think these tech companies make it hard for when you have like a situation that happens online. The most you can do is report it. And what does that happen? It just gets screened by, screened by their automated services, and then we probably hear about it within 24 hours. But then that person who's going through something is still there, and there's not a safety net to call back on. And so that's the part where we hear oftentimes now is like, what do we do with all the comments that are on a post that is fearing hate online, or if there's a post that has misinformation, or if there's a post that can circulate? And so a lot of times, like these guidelines, that even though we can make the argument that it goes against the community guidelines online, but because of that automatic server that checks it, they found it to be not. And there's no one that you can contact. There's no one you could text or call about your situation. And so definitely that, to be transparent and to be reachable for tech companies for the future that we really see.
Thank you.
I don't even know how to answer this question, but I just wish all of us were not commodified, products to be traded and sold and, manipulated. So that's my vision, and I'm not sure if that's compatible with, you know, the capitalistic system that we have. So,
But having a vision is important.
sorry,
Having a vision is important.
that's true.
Yep.
I'm not a widget. Don't tell me.
I have a vision, and it's in my title too. So as I mentioned, I'm Global Teen Wellbeing Policy. I want well-being to be truly amplified. I want us to have nailed that foundation of safety, and for us to really be able to talk about teen well-being and also empowerment. So that's the vision that we're striving for, and I think we're going to get there.
100% agree. For us, it's all about our snappers and our Snapchat community and making sure that everyone has that positive experience. But engagement, and I think the table is big enough for everyone in this room to have those conversations. So just keep that engagement going. I'm our policy lead for California. I'm based in Santa Monica, and just welcome these conversations and looking forward to connecting the rest of the day and beyond to have these conversations and get something done. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you to the panel. That was wonderful. I'm sure that everyone is itching with questions. Yes? Everyone has questions. Perfect. All right. I'm going to start over here.
Thank you. I'm Andres. I'm at Roblox. I'm our youth engagement program manager. And something that I wanted to say when you mentioned vision and future is that I think something that needs to be said in this room is that we do need to move into co-creation and co-design with young people. I love that we have so many council members here in the room, but I also believe that they should be up there. And so I think that's like a question for Connect Safely next year, is that I think I'd love to see that. At Roblox, that's where we're moving. And today on the table, we have a series of resources that were co-created with our teen council. And I think that's the vision of where I think safety is going to, is that we need to move beyond consultation to actually to community education, to user education, because safety tools are not just pieces of tech, they're also pieces of education for young people. And so I think that's something that I want to share. And I think I would love us, our teen council members here, not just from Roblox, but from different companies, to also share their opinions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Interesting conversation. I'm Chizu. I'm here on behalf of the Youth Leadership Institute, Hope Coalition. Shout out to Andrea. I'm also a youth advisor for the California Department of Public Health, Office of Health Equity, advising on the Take Space to Pause campaign, a position I got thanks to the Youth Leadership Institute. But I have a bit of a different kind of question for, more so Discord and Snapchat. Why should your platforms, right? Because we've talked about here with in terms of safety, we're seeing the move of Lishaun just brought up the idea that it's now an indicator of poverty, right? The amount of time people are spending, certain demographics are spending on the internet. So why should, when we're in these rooms having these conversations, why should your platforms be a part of youth's futures? Why is that why is that still the conversation? Do you see that in conflict with the move with things like having no phones, bills going into effect. And, so we're moving towards a direction where, okay, these platforms aren't healthy, right? But your platforms need more users and more subscribers to grow, right? So when we're talking about integrating teens, why should youth be a part of y'all's future?
Happy to answer for Snap, and I'll let Discord speak for themselves. But looking at our platform, we were built a little bit differently in the dawn of social media. I will say our founders saw what was happening out there in terms of the clicks, the likes, posting for clout, things of that sort, and they wanted a different experience, right? So for Snapchat, it really is connecting with those folks that you are closest to, the ones in your phone book, the ones that you have these daily conversations with. It's the equivalent of a virtual phone call, right? And so, and making sure that the platform is built especially for our youngest users with their privacy in mind, and making sure that they're safeguarded in that experience. So, I don't have kids that are of the age to join social media. They're 7, 5, and 2. But when the time comes, if they want to join Snapchat, I would feel comfortable having them on there, given all those privacy protections and those safety initiatives that we have in place to make sure that they have an enjoyable user experience.
Yeah, and I would just add from Discord too, awesome question. I think that we have to earn it, right? Like we have to earn a place in youth's future. And if we don't, they're not going to be there any longer. And I think that's something that we take very seriously at Discord. Again, integrating those youth voice, making sure that our platform is constantly evolving and improving. Our goal is to be the communications app that really supports, we're mostly for gamers, that supports kind of being with community in your gaming community, et cetera. But we've got to earn it. We've got to show up. And I don't want to say that that is a guarantee. That is something that we are striving for.
Hi, my name is Arna. I'm here on behalf of Gen Up. However, I also work in an organization called Project Unloaded, where we work on swaying youth away from gun ownership. And we happen to roll a lot of our campaigns on social media. One of our biggest happens to be on Snapchat. And so my question to you all, this also ties in with what you look for in the future, but where do you all draw the line between censorship and safety? Because we're seeing that as a huge issue right now on both sides of the debate. So I just want to, whoever feels they can answer it best, where do you feel that we should be drawing the line between safety so we can still have autonomy over what we see and what we're exposed to?
To jump in there. I will say the Snapchat experience still different from other platforms that are out there because we do have pre-moderated content, right? And we do have our community guidelines. Everything ladders back to our community guidelines to basically say, is this harmful? Is this dangerous? Could this cause something, to happen? That's why you won't see that many viral moments on Snapchat or things like that, because that content is pre-moderated and very highly curated. And I think that's where we kind of try to set ourselves apart and make sure that, our community is getting the information they need. But of course, the last thing we want to do is to have them harm themselves.
Hi. So I work part-time in this space, but I also work part-time at an elementary school in San Francisco. It's in a working class community, and a lot of my students get phones out of necessity. They live maybe with just mom. Mom works 2 jobs. They need to be able to contact them, and I really appreciated bringing up just the disparity between working class families and then parents who, have a lot of exposure to knowing the different tips to keep their kids safe online. And I know in San Francisco, our teachers are striking right now for better pay. Shout out SFUSD. But the part of that is that when the schools close, working class families, they really rely on the public school system. So I'm kind of interested in how policy can be made to catch and hold children that live through particularly tumultuous times if they are, working class. So yeah, how do we catch lower income and working class kids who are spending a lot of time online and likely do not have direct parental involvement because that by and large is a privilege of being able to be consistently home and, not at work.
So I live in San Francisco. I've been following the strike there. Live right next to Mission High, and so it's a twofold. That's when the policy meets the community, right? So you have to have the inside-outside strategy, and you also have a contingency plan. So if you guys did not know, San Francisco have not been in strike in 50 years. So in 50 years, we have not had to go through where families had to think about where is a student getting a meal, and so there's certain things that there should be contingency plan on the district to provide that, to provide an alternative because the teachers are in strike. And so, and also you can also work with your outside partners and community partners to show up to fill in the gap. So that's where you have to have those relationships, right, that we spoke at, that industry will only get you so far, but the community is what carries us.
Last question. Yes. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, so I had seeing that like the user agreements are often filled with like legalese and things like that, where all users, especially younger users, aren't able to like comprehend it and know what they're agreeing to. What do companies try to do to like deal with this problem? And also, what do nonprofits and judiciary committees like? How do they keep this in mind when they're making like when they're hosting discussions and when they're making decisions?
That's a great question. How do you deal with the legalese so that young people can even understand what they're agreeing to when they sign on to your platforms? Because I don't understand it. So
Anybody read a user agreement? I mean, I'm an attorney and I haven't. So we've become very used to clicking the box because you can't get the product or the service without clicking the box. But yes, I mean, I think what grade level is that, disclaimer written at? And if you don't have a meaningful choice anyway, then, you know, what good does that offer? I think sort of getting back to the disparity in parents, whether they're working, whether they're educated. I mean, I think products should be designed to be safe, and it shouldn't depend on how savvy you are, whether it's reading the user agreement or limiting your kids' access using special settings and all those things. It just shouldn't be on us to make sure that the product that's being sent into our homes is safe. Just like the child's toy or the baby seat, it should be designed safe when we bring it into our home.
thank you so much for listening. Thank you again to our panel. Round of applause for our panel.